Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review A History of Violence. So, this, of course, is a movie that I think the main reason why I will go on and say that I will adamantly enjoy this film, really go on and just be like, this film. It's like how this movie is so simple but yet is to be so good also. Like I think we just have like a bunch of things just working out really well in this movie. I think the only real goofy thing about this film is kind of like the beginning where we have like the whole entire family who of course is to try and comfort Sarah as she is to of course have a nightmare. I think that part is a little goofy. I'm like, why would the entire family just be like spring into action and go on to like comfort this kid? That's the only thing that I don't buy in this movie. But other than that, I feel like this movie, I enjoy it. A lot of people could say that it's too short of a film, or a lot of people could go on and say that uh, really it's a very flimsy story or whichever. I don't know. I just really enjoy it. I love the simplicity of it. I like the fact that also it's going to be a lot easier to review than other things. It's nice to have one smooth film where you don't have this huge complex thing that's to be like a Star Wars level or a Batman level or a thing that I can just go on and be like, yeah, this is easy, simple, and fun. Um, so, with that said, let's go into this review. It's easy enough to just say that this is one of those movies where, of course, we have a hold up where we, of course, have a guy that is to become a hero out of this whole hold up, and we go on and then have this character that is to have people come out of the woodwork to go and meet with Tom and go on and tell him he is some other character. Tom, being very confused, is to go on and say, "No, I think you got me mistaken with someone else." So much so that these guys are to be adamant and going on and on and on about this guy being this guy, to where they go into extreme measures to prove and to take this guy down because really uh, it all is going to end up in blood. Really is this story. So with that said, I think that's simple enough. Really, where can you go out of your way to say that you've seen this film? Well, I think I'm going to give you a free option, but there's also another option also. So get ready for the free option. But right now on Amazon, you can rent or buy this film. I honestly think that it's worth that kind of quality of a film. If you've never seen it, it's so good, even though you might feel that like you would rather want the free option, which of course anybody would. But I really think that this is a really good film, even though it's only an hour and 30 some odd minutes. It's still a good film. So, what is the free option? Well, you could go out of your way to Google search two apps here. You can go on and Google search a app called Letter C Movies, and you can be able to possibly be able to see this movie and a whole lot more new releases, shows that you've probably never even heard of before. You can go on and by golly be able to see any number of things. I would tag team that app with a app you'll have to Google search called Fox HD Movies. The logo will say so. The title will say something different. It'll say like play 1080p HD movies. Um, Once you download and combine yourself with both those apps, you should be able to see anything that you want at that point. Um, and I've used these uh, fairly recently. I've used them frequently because it's convenient to be able to watch anything through those two apps. You can also Google Play Store an app called TV Crush, and that will also get you into a number of different kind of movies or shows or whichever. Also, so with that, uh, so yeah, go through all those apps. Maybe one of those at the end of the day will say that you could see a history of violence because it's really really good. I really enjoy it. So with that said, I think it's about that time to just go into full on spoilers and basically go on to say whatever it is I didn't say in the cryptic sense because I kind of really vagued it out just because it's a very brief film. Anything that I am to say really in the cryptic sense is basically going to ruin this film because there's not much as far as like bullet points. It's just like the bullet points are pretty much the film. So with that said, I think it's about time to go into the film. Let's go into that double five time territory. It's about that time again to go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil this movie. Before we go, what would be my overall grading system of this? Well, I would have to say, for me personally, and some people may not feel this way, I think that this is a great movie. I just, like, for the life of me, it's like the only thing that I have a criticism about this is that it's such a short film and that it's very, like, it's really light on the story. But I don't know, I still can like it. I still can enjoy it. And really, you could probably go on and watch this 100 times and still enjoy this film. And plus, also, we have plenty enough times where there seems to be some sex going on, or even at points to where we, of course, have Maria Bello basically with just a robe on, and we can be like, wow, okay, Maria, all right, so we're getting that in this movie. Uh, So yeah, so with that said, I think it's about that time. Let's just go into spoilers. So we start off this film with two thuggish like men, Leland and Billy, uh, who are getting out of some hotel. So we go on. We have Leland, who of course is settling up their hotel bill by going on and killing the clerk and the maid that are inside this hotel. We, of course, find out that these guys are running out of water, so Billy is to go back into this hotel and is to go into this cooler, this water cooler, and kind of fill her up with this little, uh, like, milk gallon container thing. So or like water kind of has that kind of gallon thing too, but it is what it is with this story. So I don't know the specifics of container things, but it is what it is. It's a container nonetheless. So so all of a sudden we have Billy who is to notice some little girl coming out of this door, and so Billy goes on and is to shoot her, and then is to make his way back to Leland for them to drive off. I guess it seems like these guys are just kind of living off of whatever car they can find next, because it seems that the next time we are to see these two characters, they're driving a completely different car. So I'm like, okay, that seems kind of odd. So we go on here, and we of course have it where uh, we need to go on and show the stalls here. So we of course have Sarah, who of course is having a nightmare, and so Tom, Eddie, and Jack are to all come into the room to try to comfort Sarah as she's having a nightmare because she's dreaming of monsters. So we go on and we have to set up who all these characters are and what they all do. I believe Eddie is to be some lawyer of sorts. I believe, and Tom, I guess, is to have his own diner, and Jack, of course, is dealing with a consistent bully at school, technically a bully that just ridicules and humiliates Eddie, um, and so on and so forth, but we'll get to that. So, Tom, of course, is to go to his diner, and the guy who I guess is to be the cook there is to mention about this story where the girl that he used to be with used to be this girl that had these horrible nightmares that every time she would wake up, she would think that the person next to her in bed would be this axe murderer. So this girl would go on and accidentally stab this chef guy in the shoulder. And so she'd realize what she had done and then started boohoo crying about it. And so Tom was just like, well, so did you leave that girl? And the chef goes on, he's like, no, I married her. I married her for 6 years. I was like, okay. So how many times did you get stabbed? That's what I would have rebutted with. So so we go on, we have Jack who is dealing with a bully named Bobby. And so it seems that Jack is consistently trying to corner, or Bobby is consistently trying to corner Jack and is trying to humiliate him in front of the classmates. Uh, and so we go on and we have Bobby who is kind of saying all these insults against Jack. And we go on and then have Jack who is to now throw a fist to Bobby, but it seems like he's using his words against him by having all these insults being repeated when Bobby is to go on and continue all these insults, and then Jack has to go on and say, it's like, well, like, so I'm this now? Like, you forgot about all this. And so Bobby's to just go on and just shove him and then leave. We go on and later have it where, of course, Jack is to be forced to play baseball and PE, and we of course have Jack who tells Tom this at some part of the movie. So we go on and we have Jack who's playing baseball, and we coincidentally have it where I guess certain guys are wearing yellow shirts and certain guys are wearing blue shirts. And for the life of me, I would just think that they would have like reversible shirts because that would be a normal way of a lot of gyms kind of doing things. And I know my gym would usually do that, where it's like, oh, hey guys, you're wearing shirts today. Like, okay, great. And a lot of times we would just kind of like quickly flip the shirts over. So we go on and we of course have Jack that's in some outfield, and we of course have Bobby who's up to bat. So all of a sudden or Bobby's thinking that he's gonna get the winning run in PE class, which means absolutely nothing. Basically, for any baseball like thing, unless you're going to state or unless you're going to whatever, like none of this really matters. But it is what it is. So Bobby used to go and crack it, and all of a sudden we luckily have it where Jack is to catch this ball. The game's over. Yellow wins, and so Bobby, of course, is now upset because simply Jack is to get this last ball. Because I guess Bobby is either to be a perfectionist or really every single thing to do with Jack. It's like, ugh, like I don't know what it is with Bobby, but he also likes to flip people the bird when I don't know what it is with Bobby, why he desperately just wants to get to this guy. I don't know what it is with movie bullies where we have it where they're just like, man, I just want to beat this kid. Why? What is the point? I guess when you really get down to it, you just go into certain parts of town where people just want to beat up on people just because it's Tuesday. And really, I've been in certain states like that where it's just, I don't know what, people just love putting fists in faces. I don't get it, but it is what it is. So, so let's go into the more important parts of this story here. So, speaking of which, uh, we of course have Tom, who is to be holding or doing some work at this diner, making food and so on and so forth. So we go on and have both Leland and Billy, who are to go and drive their way to this establishment. So after almost swerving out of the way to try to dodge Bobby, as he's almost flipping the bird and realizing, like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't do that with these people, because who knows who they are. So Leland and Billy go to Tom Stahl's establishment to go on and ask for coffee and ask for pie. And Tom is telling them, hey guys, we're closing up here. And they're like, coffee! And so Tom is like, okay, all right, it's not going to be that fresh, but here you go. So we go on and we have, of course, Tom telling, I think the girl that works there, who I believe is Charlotte, that she can leave for the night. And she's like, okay. So all of a sudden, Billy is to go on and is to grab this woman and is to kind of push her into this chair. And at some point, is to be like grabbing onto her mouth and then kind of like smears whatever I guess was upon his hand, which was probably nothing, just to have this kind of effective, like, I don't give a attitude. So we, of course, go on and have Leland, who whips out this gun and is going to supposedly hold this place up, but I can't justify why. Because Tom is telling Leland here, it's like, well, hey, sir, we don't have much money. And Leland's just like, well, that's not what it is. So like we just have it to where Leland and Billy just kills everywhere where they're to go, so they don't have to pay for anything. I guess is really the goal here. So all of a sudden, since Leland is realizing that lives are at risk here, all of a sudden we have, or since Tom realizes that lives are at risk, we go on and have Tom who crashes this this thing of coffee and breaks this guy's face, goes on and is to grab the gun of Leland and goes and shoots Billy, having him go flying out this door that's made of glass. And so Leland, of course, is to stab Tom, and then Tom goes on and shoots Leland in the head. Tom is kind of looking back and forth, noticing if both these men are dead. And so cue up really Tom being in the hospital, who's seeing every single channel covering Tom's story about his heroism and him going and saving a number of these people, as all these witnesses are to go on and say, like, yeah, like Tom just saved our lives. So all of a sudden Eddie is to go on here and to meet with Tom. And so Tom is saying, like, hey, are you as sick of hearing about me as I am? And he's like, no, I think it's great. We also had the one moment where, of course, all the kids were gone in the house, and we have Eddie trying to spice up the marriage with Tom by going and getting this cheerleading outfit for them to try to recapture their youth that they didn't have between one another. I guess their teenage years. So Eddie is to go on and be wearing this cheerleading outfit, and Tom is like, oh my god. So we go on and have them have some a love making session, simply because of course they would in this movie, because we have it multiple times. So we go on and we of course have Tom, who is to have his leg bandaged up. And so at first he's going and getting carried out with this wheelchair. And so all of a sudden everybody in town is just kind of clapping it up, and they really appreciate what Tom had done. And so Tom goes home, and all of a sudden there's a news reporter right in Tom's face, like, "Hey Tom, like, how do you feel about your heroism? Hey, like, how do you feel about what you did?" And Tom is just like, not all that good. Like, I killed people. So we go on, and we have like him like asking these questions, and it feels like he has very little answers. It kind of feels like the Fifth Element, where we of course have Chris Tucker's character that's going and trying to uh, put a mic to Bruce Willis's character to see what his answer is, and we of course have Bruce Willis just saying thrilled. To where Chris Tucker's like, "Oh my god, like, you need to have something more expressive than just one word answers. Like, come on, give me something." And we just have Bruce Willis who's like thrilled. So we go on here, and we have Tom go back inside, and hoping that, of course, this whole news reporter thing is going to blow away, that there's going to be at some point some bigger news story than him. But I doubt it, because this is probably a small town. So we all of a sudden have Eddie, who's realizing that there is some car, I think some Cadillac, that's just kind of out there, just kind of looking. And so Tom is going to look at this car, and it seems very familiar to him. But he's like, well, maybe it's not really who I think it is. So all of a sudden the next day, going into Tom going to work, it seems like his truck won't start, so Eddie is to kind of drop him off. We go on, we have Tom, who is to evidently be very busy. I guess everybody has heard about the news, so everybody just wants to go to the restaurant where someone is to be a survivor, savior, guy who is to throw down. So, so random words here. So, uh, so Tom's place is really busy, really hopping. So all of a sudden we have Carl Fogarty, who is to come into this restaurant and is to, of course, mention that Tom is actually to be Joey Cusack. And Tom is swearing up and down that he doesn't know who he's talking about. He's never been to Philadelphia. I'm sorry, sir. I'm Tom. I'm Tom Stahl. And so we go on and have Eddie Stahl, who of course is kind of hearing this conversation, and we even have it to where Tom is kind of telling these guys, like, "Hey, like, if you're not paying customers, sir, like, you guys should just go and leave." To where all of a sudden, Fogarty is to give Tom $100 and says, like, "Hey, we're, I guess, paying customers now." So Tom tries to give back the $100. The guy refuses. The guy walks off. So we of course have it where Eddie is just kind of like, "Do you really think that like why are these guys after you? Like why uh what do you think their story is?" And Tom is like, "I don't know. They must have just saw me on the news and confused me with some other guy. I don't know." So we go on, and of course we have it where these guys aren't going to leave anytime soon. Uh, we of course have Tom, who's alerting Sheriff Sam to kind of see them out of town. So we have, of course, the sheriff going and meeting with Fogarty, and it seems like they're having a bit of an exchange where, of course, Fogarty's like, "Well, excuse me, sir, is there anything that we had done wrong here?" And Sheriff Sam is just like, "Well, no, like, I'm just kind of checking on things. And so Fogarty's just like, okay, well, uh, good good luck on your job or something like that, or some goofy thing like that. Uh, Continue to do a good job, sheriff. And then they leave. So we have it where, of course, Sheriff Sam is to know and kind of research who these people are, and to say, I guess, that they're consistently going off trying to figure out who this Joey Cusack filler guy is. So we of course have Sheriff Sam. That's like, man, these guys are really substantial guys. These guys have probably uh, killed a number of people in Philadelphia, as if he like knows all that. That these guys have probably spent some serious time or been accused of any number of things. So we go on here, and we have at one point where uh, Tom all of a sudden is walking to the diner to all of a sudden see the same black car, driving by. So all of a sudden, Tom is desperately trying to call the house, telling Eddie to get the shotgun ready, that it's possible that these guys are coming for them. So Tom just starts as much as possible to run as quickly as he can home, to all of a sudden be like pelted with sweat. So we of course have it where the car does not come to this house. And so Tom is like, oh my god, like I thought the worst. Like I seriously thought that uh, I must be losing my mind or something, because like I thought someone was gonna come and try to get to us. So we go on. We have Eddie, who's going to take Jack and Sarah to school, and so on and so forth. So we go on, and later on have Eddie, who is to go shoe shopping with her daughter. Seems like while they're shopping, we of course have Sarah that goes out of the shoe store, because she wants to go on and just look at the front of the window display of some toy store. All of a sudden, we have, of course, Eddie, who is to want to go and find where her daughter is, to then have to fling her shoes at this woman because she's not going to buy them. We, of course, have Eddie, who goes on to notice where her daughter is because Fogarty is to point over where she is. So, we, of course, have Eddie right in front of a kid using some profanity. And so Fogarty's like, you know what, we don't have to use that kind of language, ma'am. So we go on, and we have Fogarty, who's mentioning to Eddie, it's like, you know what, like you need to go and ask your husband why is it that he's so good at killing. Also, like Fogarty's mentioned his glass eye, and then at some point, I guess Joey had gone on to try to pluck it out with this barbed wire. And so the only thing out of this eye that Fogarty can really see is just Joey's face, just every time he opens and closes it. Just remembering what Joey had taken from him, and so on and so forth. So we have Eddie, who's mentioning that she's going to put a restraining order on Fogarty, and he's like, okay, fine, sure. So we go on, and we have Eddie, who is just like, she's going to Tom, and she's like, you know what, like, is it possible that, like, you could be this guy? Because it seems like these people are pretty adamant about it. It seems like they won't let this go. So we go on to the point where finally Fogarty is to go and grab Jack. Um, after both Jack and Tom have a disagreement because Jack goes to school and is to again be bullied by Bobby to the point where both Jack and his friend Judy, I would say friend Judy because it doesn't really seem like they kissed any part of this film because they were barely with one another. Jack finally stands up to Bobby and just starts beating the crap out of him. Just freaking kicks him in the stomach and punches him in the face, and also kicks one of his friends in the balls. So we of course have Jack, who is of course telling Bobby, it's like, "Are you laughing now?" Freaking punching him, because we have Bobby who's saying that, like, hey man, like, what would your dad think of you right now? Like, what would your dad think? So, like, say a joke, say something funny. And so we then go on and finally have Jack, who is to finally seek vengeance upon Bobby, beat the out of him. And so he ends up getting suspended. And so we go on and we have Tom, who's saying like, well, hey, like, we don't hit people. And Jack turns around and says, no, we shoot them. As Tom goes on and slaps his own son, and I'm like, wait a minute, didn't you just say that we don't hit people? Isn't a slap technically a hit? What the Tom? So we don't hit people, but we slap them evidently? Slapping is a hitting thing. Whatever. So Jack runs off, and so we go on and we have Fogarty who comes back with Jack. And so now we have it where Fogarty really wants Joey to come with them because, of course, uh, Tom is supposed to come back to speak with his brother Richie. And so we have Fogarty who's consistently mentioning to Tom here, it's like, well, hey, like, it pains me to just watch you try and be this person that you're obviously not, Joey, and so on and so forth. So we finally go on and just have Tom admit that he is Joey, as we go on here and we just have Tom who just starts beating the crap out of Fogarty's thugs and is to like break the one guy's nose and is to go on and beat the crap out of the other guy. And so now we just have uh, Thomas here with a bullet in the shoulder. And so we of course have Fogarty who's saying like, well, hey, like, before you die, uh, like, what else? What do you got left to say? And so Thomas tells Fogarty here that he should have killed him in Philadelphia. So all of a sudden we have Jack, who is to have this shotgun now, and he shoots Fogarty, and so Fogarty falls over, and so now we have Tom again in the hospital for his shoulder. So we go on and we had Eddie watching this whole thing, and so she's going to this hospital and she's saying, it's like, well, yeah, I watched you become Joey right in front of my eyes. And like realizing that the next thing that she's going to have to get answers for are things that is to be that Tom has been lying his whole entire life. Because Tom then does come clean that he was Joey at this point, or at one point, but that was years ago. That was 3 years ago. And that he spent 3 years getting rid of that guy, and that guy is dead, for him to become Tom because the name was available. Tom Stall's name was available for him to take. So we go on and we have Eddie now who's realizing, oh my god, like my name, our kids' names, like it's all a sham, it's all a lie. And so Tom is just like, well, yeah, like so I'm this guy for you. And so we just have it to where Eddie has just realized that Tom has just lied this whole entire time. And so we go on, and so we have it where now the sheriff is to go to Tom after he gets back from the hospital. Goes and Tom is trying to get his car to work, his truck to work, and eventually he gets it working. So the sheriff is to sit down with Tom and saying, like, you know what? It really does make sense that these people are after the wrong guy. It seems like these guys are professionals. It seems like it makes a lot of sense that maybe Tom is under some witness protection program or something like that. That's what he says off the first time, but I'm reiterating that now because I forgot about it before. So we go on and we have like the sheriff who's just like, "Are you sure that these guys are?" To where Eddie goes on and is to tell the sheriff, like, haven't we been through enough, sheriff? As we have, of course, Eddie having this convincing kind of cry because it's legit tears. And so all of a sudden, sheriff is realizing, you know what, like, I think there's something about this that is to just be a mistaken identity, and I'll just leave it at that. Because we have the sheriff who goes on and says that that they protect their own kind of thing. I'm like, well, just then I would say just leave it be then. What does it matter? Like, this is like a guy from your town now, but I guess it is what it is. So we have the sheriff leave, and all of a sudden we have like Tom saying to Eddie, it's like, well, thanks. As we have Eddie and Tom chasing after her. And so Eddie, of course, is upset. Frickin' just slaps Tom, and Tom chokes her. And so all of a sudden they go into this really aggressive lovemaking sesh. And so all of a sudden we end up seeing Eddie come out with just her robe. And so really what goes on here is that Tom is to go and sleep on the couch. And so all of a sudden, late at night, Tom is to get this phone call. And of course, it is to be Richie Cusack. I don't know how this guy got this phone number, but I guess he got it. So, of course, we have Cusack who's consistently calling Joey Brohim for whatever reason. So, we go on and we have Richie who's telling Tom here, it's like, well, hey, it's either you come and meet me in Philly, or I come and meet you where you're at. So Tom goes on and is to, of course, uh, get his car started, getting rolling all the way to Philadelphia. And so we go on, we have Tom go and meet at some bar with one of Richie's men. So we go on and, of course, have Tom who orders beer and meets up with one of Richie's men. And we, of course, have Tom saying, like, well, hey, what do we do next? And the guy's like, hey, finish your beer, and then we'll go. Tom tosses the beer to this guy, so they leave. So we have this kind of weird scene here where I guess Tom is going and talking to this guy and saying, like, hey, like, um, I guess these are to be pretty big houses, huh? And so Richie's saying, like, or this guy who's Richie's guy is saying, like, well, yeah, like Richie lives like pretty big now, I guess. So, because I guess this neighborhood isn't to be all that familiar, because I guess Richie has really worked up to being a much more substantial mob boss. We had at one point where like Jack was going on and realizing that Thomas is now Joey, and so we have Jack at one point who is talking to his dad and saying like, "Well, hey, what do I call you now?" And Tom is just like, "Well, you call me Dad, or you can call me Pop Pop, or you can call me Father." So we go on and we have Jack who's mentioning all these like almost mafia jokes, just like, well, hey, like, if I go and I rob some store, like, are you gonna hit me because you don't get half the action? I'm like, what kind of goofy is this? And then we have to where Jack is saying that if he goes and tells his friend about who his father really is Thomas gonna have him whacked? I'm like, this just kind of comes out of nowhere, really, but still, like, it's a whole mafia like thing. Because really finding out that your dad is possibly a mafia guy, I guess. So, but anyways, so we have Thomas going on and meeting with Richie as he's getting patted down. Uh, so we go on and we have Richie, who is to have this kind of weird, kind of like butting of heads and and kissing a little bit and hugging. So we go on and of course have Richie with the phone call for Tom saying like, "Hey, I guess you're still really good at killing." And so we of course have Richie who's mentioning the one time that Joey was to go on and bang some girl right at that bar, realizing that that bar is still, oddly enough, still open. And Joey is just like, I never banged that girl at that bar. And Richie's like, yeah, but you should have. Okay, sure. So we go on and we have these guys both in this office. So Richie is going on and mentioning that at one point, like, hey, like, do you love the farm life? And we of course have Joey that's like, I don't live at a farm. And so Richie's like, well, like Fogarty said that you had like a pig or something. Like it smelled like a pig there. You have a pig farm? So so we go on and we go through this story, we go through most of the dialogue. So really the big thing here is that Richie is to say that Joey had costed him. That really Richie was to be kind of getting up to a level uh, that was going to make him basically, uh, like, I guess, a really big, substantial guy. That there was only one guy left um, besides Richie, and that guy was going to kick the bucket soon. But what Thomas had did, which I guess was to barbed wire that guy's eye, and was to kill a number of guys, was to conflict with that. So Richie had accosted a lot of time and a lot of money, greasing wheels, trying to get back with certain kind of people because of what Joey had did. So Richie here wants Joey dead. So all of a sudden we now have a guy with some piano wire that is trying to choke out uh, Joey here, but Joey is to put his hand luckily up at the perfect time to block this whole choking thing. And so we then go and have Joey who kind of tips his chair back and goes on and is to start to fight these guys hand to hand. and is to take them both out, snapping necks and not cashing any checks. But you get what I say here. So we go on, and of course we have Richie here with the most probably famous line out of this whole entire film, where Richie is to go on to one of his men and like, how do you that up? How do you that up? So we go on, we have one guy left who's going through and kind of checking around. And so Richie is going to this one guy like, hey, don't perform CPR on any of these guys or give them a smooch or anything. Just like go on and find my brother. So we go on and we have, of course, eventually, Richie is to be accidentally outside of his own house while Joey is going and taking care of one of Richie's guards, killing him. And so once Richie tries to go for his keys, we all of a sudden have Thomas who's opening this door, and we have this kind of one last ditch moment where, of course, we have it to where Joey does get the drop on Richie, shoots him in the head, kills him here, and I think we have a moment where both these characters just like, why has it gotten to this place? You would have thought, you would have really thought that Joey's character would have gone on and emptied this house out. You would have thought there would have been a big, massive amount of drug money stashed somewhere or some kind of something for Joey to go on and bring home like this big, massive amount of money. But no, he didn't, I guess, for this story. So uh, Joey goes off and is to clean himself, I guess, of both Joey and blood upon his chest. So Tom is to go on and is to get a new set of clothes and is to come back home where, of course, our family is now eating dinner and we have the whole entire family who does not say a single word. Kind of interesting, or I'd be kind of interested to see what the dialogue would be right after that moment. That if there were to ever have been a sequel to this movie, like what more story would we go into if there would have been a sequel to this film? Um, but yeah, because we have this like kind of dinner moment where they're just setting the table. Eddie is crying, and we just have, of course, Thomas who's just like looking at his wife, and that's how the movie ends. So with that said, I think that is to go on and finish up this movie so I can get out of here. Bye, buddy. Bye, buddy.